Good morning, first grade, and welcome back to Bible. Today's story is entitled, A Cheater is Cheated, and today we'll be talking about how deception and sin can continue to cause trouble. A cheater is cheated. Jacob was tired. Surely he was near to the Haran by now. He squinted in the morning sun and saw a well ahead with 3 flocks of sheep lying all around it. Jacob hurried his steps. Those men might be related to him. When he was close enough, he called to the shepherds, My brothers, where do you come from? We are from Haran, they answered. Do you know Laban, son of Nahor? They did. How is he? He is doing well. Here comes his daughter Rachel right now, with the sheep. Jacob remembered the story of his mother's marriage. Would he too find a wife at the well? When Rachel came, he rolled stone from the mouth of the well and watered her sheep for her. Then he told her that he was her Aunt Rebecca's son. He was so glad to finally meet some family. Of course, Uncle Laban was overjoyed to see him. He kept him at his house for over a month and asked him a million questions about how his sister was doing. During that month, Jacob fell in love with Rachel, Laban's younger daughter. He offered to work for Laban 7 years if he could marry Rachel. So guess what? Laban agreed. For 7 years, Jacob worked harder than he had ever had in his life. He loved Rachel so much that it seemed to him like only a few days and not 7 years. At long last, the wedding day came. There was great joy and feasting. Jacob was so excited. He couldn't wait to have the right to look behind the heavy veil that his new bride wore. In the morning, when the party was finally over, Jacob learned the real reason why the veil was so thick. Laban had tricked him. His new wife was not Rachel. It was her sister Leah. He said to Laban, What have you done to me? I worked hard for you so that I could marry Rachel. Why did you trick me? Laban said, In our country, we do not allow the younger daughter to marry before the older daughter, but complete the full week of the marriage ceremony with Leah. I will give you Rachel to marry also, but you must work for me another 7 years. Jacob was sick inside. He didn't want to have 2 wives. He loved only Rachel. But Leah had been given to him. He agreed to Laban's plan, but all week he couldn't wait for Rachel to be his wife. When she finally was, he always loved her the best. What an awful situation! Jacob had been raised in a home where there was only one wife who was loved very much. Isaac had probably learned from his father Abraham's mistakes. It made Jacob miserable to be married to Leah too, when it was Rachel whom he loved. What else could he do? Inside, anger with his uncle began to grow. And why must he work for another 7 years? That's 7 plus 7. That's 14 years. He must have remembered Esau, and Isaac thought, This is what it feels like to be deceived. Leah was not happy either. She knew Jacob loved Rachel more than he loved her. She felt as if she was never good enough. How she longed to be loved for herself. As for Rachel, she had looked forward to marrying the man she loved. Now her older sister was not only Jacob's wife, she was the first wife. Laban was the only one who was happy. He had both daughters provided for and had 7 more years of free work from the best worker he had ever had. As the years went by, the family situation became worse and worse. Leah had 4 sons, one right after the other. Each time she thought, Surely now Jacob will love me. Rachel didn't have even 1 child, and she was so unhappy and sad. Even though she was the wife that Jacob loved the most, she was not happy because she wanted children and she couldn't have any. She complained to Jacob about it. He became angry and said, Do you think it's my fault? I'm not God. So Rachel tried the same heathen custom that Sarah had tried. She gave Jacob her maid, Bilhah. Bilhah had 2 sons. Then Leah gave Jacob her maid, Zilpah, and she had 2 sons. Then Leah had 2 more sons and a daughter. Now there were 10 boys, and the household was still not happy. And still Rachel was childless. Day and night she prayed, and at last the miracle happened. Rachel had a boy, and guess what? She named him Joseph, and he changed her life. She poured out the love and longing of her heart on the baby boy. As he grew, she and Jacob told the stories of this special family that God had chosen to spread his love to the earth. Even as a little boy, Joseph felt how special he was, how excited it was to be a part of God's wonderful plan. After Joseph was born, Jacob decided it was time to go back to his family in Canaan and try to make peace with them. All these years, the feeling of his sin had been with him. He knew God had forgiven him, but still Jacob felt the burden of what he had done, deceiving his brother. He wanted to ask his father Isaac and his brother Esau to forgive him. He wanted to see his mother again. He went to Laban and told him he wanted to leave, but Laban wouldn't let him. He promised to finally pay Jacob his wages. In fact, he would let Jacob have a share of the flocks, so Jacob stayed. But his flocks grew faster than Laban's, and a bad feeling began to grow among Laban's sons. Finally, God told Jacob in a dream to go back home. Jacob waited until Laban was away. Then he took his large family and all his flocks and his herds, and he left. When Laban found out that Jacob and his family were gone, he followed them. After Laban caught up with Jacob, they argued, but they finally made up. Laban admitted he had not treated Jacob fairly, and he knew he was wrong. And they had a big farewell party right there on the road. After the party, Laban and Jacob did something special to show that there was peace between them. Laban said, "Let us make an agreement. Let us set up a pile of stones to remind us of our agreement." So Jacob took large rocks and set it up on an end. He told his relatives to gather rocks. So they took rocks and piled them up. Then they ate beside the pile of rocks. Laban named that place in his language a pile around us, a pile to remind us. And Jacob gave the place the same name in Hebrew. Laban said to Jacob, "The pile of rocks will remind us of the agreement we have between us. That is why we will call this place a pile to remind us." It was also called the Mizpah. That was because Laban said, "Let the Lord watch between me and you while we're absent one from another." So they parted with love and forgiveness in their hearts, and Jacob went on his way to his home. So our memory verse today, it was called Mizpah. This was because Laban said, "Let the Lord watch over us while we are separated from each other." Genesis 31:49.